Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, takes the best character from Fury Road and gives us her backstory, yet introduces a new character who manages to outshine her in much the same way that she did Mad Max himself. Reviews are fervently mixed, and I'm on the side that's feeling rather disappointed by George Miller's latest offering. But before I get further into it, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and switching on notifications, as it really helps us out. I'll start with what I did enjoy, which primarily revolves around Chris Hemsworth and his portrayal of Dementus and his merry crew of motorists. I was a bit concerned after seeing the trailer, having had bad experiences before with famous actors donning prosthetic noses that are unable to really mask them, but I'm happy to report that Hemsworth is one with his nose. Dementus is the wasteland's answer to a messiah. In this dog-eat-dog future, this character evokes figures of human history like Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great, smart and efficient conquerors of lands and people. The atrocities he commits as part of his domination are horrible, yet that teddy bear, that mention of having lost his children, make him a character surprisingly easy to sympathize with. In most post-apocalyptic stories, children are a symbol of the future, such as in Children of Men. And in many ways, George Miller's world is also driven by children, most obviously Immortan Joe's wives and factory line of mothers producing milk. I've analyzed these details in a previous video, so if you're interested in watching that, then follow the link above or in the description below. Dementus losing his children is him losing his hope for the future, and with that goes much of his humanity. Glimpses of it return when he gets attached to Furiosa, who serves briefly as a replacement daughter, and their connection drives the plot of the film. Thor has undeniably given Hemsworth a lot of fame and fortune, but I don't think the character has really helped him grow as an actor or show off his acting prowess. Whilst here, I think he delivers the subtleties of Dementus beautifully. You can see the pain in his eyes, and the fear of it surfacing feeds his constant need to find a next target to conquer. And he doesn't crumble when he loses power, he just figures out how to regain it. There's a compelling, tragic Promethean quality to his life, a mythological comparison made even more fitting with his final resting place or lack thereof. As I mentioned in my intro, in Fury Road, although Max drives the story somewhat, we're really there to see Furiosa, and yet ironically in her own film she's sidelined and Dementus feels like he's given the spotlight. And nowhere is this more annoyingly obvious to me than when he captures Jack and Furiosa and tortures them. In this scene, Furiosa is watching the only other person that she has ever trusted apart from her mother, the person that she is perhaps falling in love with, being mutilated and dying, whilst her arm is being torn off. And yet, what does George Miller do? He decides to cut to Dementus, sitting on top of his monster truck and slowly getting bored by the show that he's put on for himself. You could argue that this is a tale of revenge, and that the climax is actually when Furiosa confronts Dementus. But I'm not buying it. The loss of love and simultaneous loss of limb is surely the climax, the final straw moment. Jack had convinced Furiosa to drive away, to abandon her need for revenge, and to fulfill the promise that she had made to her mother and finally go home. Dementus takes this away from her yet again, and the audience is not allowed to see her come to terms with this fact, to see her desperation, to see her need for survival, and that moment when she decides that it's not worth giving up and she'd rather rip her own arm off. As wonderfully emotive Anya Taylor-Joy is with her expressions and the few lines she was given, I think she was done her disservice with a character that feels passive to the events of the plot. One of the few active moments happens early on when, as a kid, she outsmarts Rictus and disguises herself as a war boy. And yes, another active moment is when she has to build her own arm. but it's belittled by the Great War that is happening in the background and that she's not even a part of. And to add insult to injury, we are given a glimpse during this montage of the electric guitar guy from Fury Road, the creme de la creme of psychos who is relegated to the back of the scene as the war boys pick apart the fallen. Therein lies the segue to one of my biggest issues with Furiosa. Much of the world-building details are recycled. The action predominantly takes place in the Citadel, Bullet Farm, and Gastown, places already explored in Fury Road. What about Bartertown from the older films, or perhaps the Great White region introduced in the video game? We also barely see and learn almost nothing new about the Green Place. George Miller has created a fascinating, visceral, and wildly imaginative world, and so much of my enjoyment with Fury Road was in discovering the details of it, and what makes them so horrific. In Furiosa, so many of these details were repeated and landed flat because the information was not new, and the same goes for many of the characters. The chastity-belted wives were not shocking. The war boy sacrificing himself was not shocking, especially not compared to Nicholas Holt's brilliant Nux. The old woman harvesting maggots was really the only point of discomfort for me, but apart from that and Dementus and some new vehicles, I wasn't discovering more about this world, and that severely affected my enjoyment of it. It just felt like a missed opportunity. On a technical note, I think the understated score was actually a detriment to the film, as nothing was given that high-stakes soundtrack. The roar of the engines was not enough to carry the sound design that felt far more creatively utilized in Fury Road, and the elaborate chapter titles tried hard to convince us that we're watching something profound, but instead further segmented this already badly paced film. Also, it's hard not to compare the visuals of Furiosa to Fury Road, as something is very much missing from this origin story. Mainly, the VFX felt far more distracting and obvious even from the first scene, when Furiosa's mother mounting a horse looked incredibly janky. The action sequences were still creatively choreographed, but lacked the same grandeur of those in Fury Road, and altogether it was disappointing to have so many practical moments spoiled by those that obviously weren't. There were a few notably stunning shots, such as Dementus in the red smoke, and when Furiosa reverses and she has that strip of light across her eyes. A lot of the child POV looking up at characters shots were very cool and well utilized, but then there were shots like the mechanics building the war rig time-lapse that felt very YouTube vloggy and really dumbed down the cinematography overall. There was a better use of time-lapse with the wig that Furiosa makes as a child and the way that the tree grows through it. That was an interesting way of showing time passing, but it does remind me of a plot point which you may think I'm nitpicking at this point, but it definitely bothered me whilst watching it, which is after having successfully grown up disguised as a war boy, Furiosa reveals her hair dramatically to Jack, and no one bats an eye. No one mentions her escape, who's to blame, why she wasn't discovered earlier, and why she isn't just thrown back with the other wives because she's clearly still a viable baby maker. The plot cares so little in explaining how she managed to become Imperator, or however you say it, apart from that one moment she hooks up the truck. And I can't help but ask, why should I care if the film doesn't? Overall, Hemsworth steals the show in Furiosa and Mad Max Saga, showcasing his range with a curious and well-written antagonist that makes you question why the protagonist didn't receive the same care and attention. Anya Taylor-Joy feels somewhat wasted, as does the opportunity to build upon this fascinating world that's been regurgitated from its predecessor. Thank you for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe and switch on notifications so you don't miss future videos, and comment below with your thoughts on the film. For more film content, feel free to follow us on Letterboxd and TikTok, links in the description. Otherwise, this has been Tea Break Film Reviews. My name's Michelle and I hope you have a lovely day.